This story comes from a response to a Bigfoot documentary. The poster couldn't bring himself to say the word and clearly avoids it throughout his story. I am in my mid-50s, and up until recently, I didn't think these things were real. June 2013 made me a believer. I was on a bicycle tour throughout the Midwest when I pulled over and camped in a primitive campsite in southeast Ohio. Once I got my camp set up, I noticed that I was the only one camping in this area, and I started my fire just before dark and sat there listening to my radio to pass the time and not feel so alone. The frogs were doing their croaking sounds, and there were crickets, and even a coyote would chime in every now and then. At about 10 p.m., I was still hearing all these sounds, and then I heard a roar. It sounded like the kind of roar an African lion would make, and a long, drawn-out whoop. Dead silence fell all around me after that, and only the radio could be heard. I shut it off and strained to hear any sound, and after about 15 minutes, I heard people off in the forest talking. It sounded like it might be an Asian language. This went on for a few minutes, and then it stopped, not to be heard again. I sat up for about a half hour, and still no noises from the frogs, the crickets, or anything but subtle twig snapping just outside my campsite. I noticed that my skin started to crawl when every now and then I heard "humph" from different places around me in the tree line. I told myself it must be deer moving around. I had a large mag light, and I shined it into the tree line just to see if I could pick up eye shine from the deer. I soon realized it wasn't deer. Off to my right, something heavy slammed onto the ground as I panned my light around. A dull, heavy thud, like the sound of a large person or animal hitting the dirt. I realized I was not alone, and the only protection I had was in my backpack. A 12-gauge flare gun, which I quickly armed myself with. It was all I had other than a pocket knife. I sat there, my fire going down, too afraid at this point to go get firewood, so I sat there, dead quiet. I could hear my heart racing and my ears ringing. It was that quiet. After about 20 minutes of this, I started to hear movement in several different positions around me at the same time. I counted 9 different positions surrounding me. By now, my heart was pounding hard. I felt like I was going to be attacked, but instead, I heard the chirp of crickets, and then the frogs started up again. Now I was even more scared because over those sounds I couldn't hear what was going on around me. Then I heard a sound like a baseball bat hitting a hard ball 3 times in a row, and everything went silent again. This was too much for me to handle. At this point I was thinking, someone is out there with a bat, and they're going to come in here into my camp and try to beat me with it. I started to pray for forgiveness and protection. Yes, it was that bad. At that time all this was going on, I felt like I was being stalked from all sides, twigs snapping all around me. I had 3 flares, and I knew that they probably wouldn't be effective against whatever was out there from a ballistic point of view. My fire now just glowing coals, I had had enough, and I yelled out, "I have a gun. You better stop effing around." When I said that, the forest came alive, with fast crashing sounds of movement through the trees going away from me. I fired a round off into the coals just to prove I wasn't bluffing. The force of the shot sent coals and soot everywhere. Off in the distance, I heard a single shrill whistle, like a signal to come over here or a "hey you" type of whistle. Then a fake coyote howl. Imitated, not the real thing. I know the real thing when I hear it. More whistles from different areas, and a final roar, and then for the rest of the night, nothing. Daylight came, and I was exhausted, with no sleep. I packed up camp and prepared to leave the area, back to the main road. I had 2 or 3 miles of forest to get through to get to the main road. This is when I found out who my visitors were. I started back down the trail, and I heard a newborn baby crying off to my left. Maybe I was hearing things, I thought to myself, Who would have a baby out here? This didn't make sense. Deer flies and mosquitoes were all over me. Why would someone have a baby out here? After about a half a mile in a ravine off trail, I saw something light blue sticking up through the leaves. I went over to see what it was, and it was a winter snowsuit, complete with a hood laying there. It was rotten and appeared to have been torn up, like it was dragged around for a while and left there by someone. The first thought that entered my mind was that it was some kind of warning sign. I picked up my pace, and a short time down the trail, somebody had placed dead, rotten logs across the trail. 2 of them laying on the trail in the form of an X. Both logs were about 8 feet long. These were not here the day before. I went around them, not realizing at the time what it meant. Then the meowing started. Up on the ridge to my right. Again, fake meowing, almost like teasing to antagonize me. This got me really creeped out. I kept moving even faster now. Occasionally, rocks would come rolling down the ridge towards me. Every time I got tired and slowed down to rest, sticks would snap all around me, and it dawned on me that whoever was up there was escorting me out of the area. I rounded a large rock outcropping, and down below me in the trees I saw something dark pacing me. Now I knew what was going on. It was my size, and it was not supposed to be real. I soon learned that I was not alone. And they were not trying to hide themselves for at least the next mile as they followed me. Until I approached the top of a steep hill, I put the pedal down very hard and soon was reaching high speeds going downhill on a paved road. Once I reached the bottom, I pedaled like my life depended on it, and I didn't stop until I reached some kind of civilization. It came in the form of a church and a farmhouse with an abandoned furnace across the street. I was there for hours, sleeping on the steps of that church until mid-afternoon, and then I started on my way again, hoping to find a town or a city to retreat to before it got dark again. I had no such luck. It got dark, and I rode all through the night. Miles down that road, I found a rest area that was busy with people traveling. I stayed on that busy highway until I reached the Cincinnati city limits, and from then on, nothing else like that occurred. Until 2016, when I had a run-in with something in Tennessee at a campground. It was off Barkley Lake on Old Paris Road. That was the last time I went into the woods. Never again. Now I stay in the city, and I work my county job, and I'm happy. Everything I've said here is true. It was in Ohio, in the southeast part of Salt Fork State Park. My campsite was back on the interior horse trails, 3 miles in on the East Loop Trail. Take caution if you stay out there at night. There are many out there.